The Notcast, life, love and misery and deep shit.
Do you ever wonder, what the fuck am I doing here? Is this it? Maybe you've got the car, career, house, family and friends, everything that should make you happy. But still, there's this tenacious sense of being trapped, stuck, lost, or just a bit bloody empty. Welcome to the Notcast, where two therapist coaches, aka theracoaches, lay bare their psycho-spiritual journey of struggle, strife, and realization in their soul search for the keys to a happier, more fulfilling life.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to episode 17 of the Notcast, Grief and Loss, 5 keys to help you find peace again. Yeah.
It's like, do I make a joke? Because it's quite a sullen episode.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Or at least a sullen title.
Yeah.
Sullen subject.
Yeah. I guess it can be what we want it to be.
I can. Well, it's our podcast. But then there's also like, is it appropriate?
Is it appropriate? According to who?
And now I'm becoming the PC police in my mind. I've become what I hate.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because that came up for me as well. Like I was sat there and I was thinking about, is it going to be okay to kind of laugh in this one? And I've never really thought about that when we've done an episode before as much, you know? But definitely with this one, I was like, oh, I wonder if the tone of this one's going to be very different.
Well, I had the same, but I guess thinking about it, it makes sense because loss is one of those things where, like, I guess we know it's painful, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I guess we all know what that's like. And I don't know, like I'm a very big believer that you should be able to joke about anything, that there's a funny side to anything, that humor is like, you know, you make connections between things, you see something in a different perspective, like you have to jump out of the current perspective, like that. The point in humor is it helps you do that. It helps with change. It helps with moving on. And I also believe though that it's about timing and about context and all of that stuff. And you know, you wouldn't make a crude joke about someone who's just lost their partner or their spouse, or a crude joke about their spouse, you know, unless, I suppose, that'd always be a caveat.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like you would want to be sensitive because the idea is you'd want them to laugh, not be hurt.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what comes up for me. And that for me is why I think, you know, I was mindful of that, where it's like, or anything else, and like, oh, you know, can joke about it, but this, it's like, oh,
yeah,
not sure.
Yeah, I went there too. Honestly, I went there too. It's like, oh, but I don't know if that's because obviously, although grief is a natural response or reaction to loss, we've kind of use it specifically to cover death. You know, people relate it and associate it a lot more with that. And actually, grief is the response to any loss. So I guess when you see it like that, it kind of, it shifted it for me to kind of go, actually, it's not that I'm just talking about that process. And I have to say, having been in a grief process for the last year, the laughter has been so healing for me. So without the laughter, I don't think I'd be sat here doing this episode right now. So definitely have needed the laughter during that process.
No, I resonate with that. You know, and just touching on what you were saying about it being about death and, you know, but not always, or at least I guess that's what you were alluding to. That's what came up for me as I, you know, first listed what's my experience of loss been. And I have lost people. But actually then when I looked at, well, when else have I experienced loss? It was things like friends, relationships, or even, you know, even to do with work, which, you know, it's not a death as such, as in like physically the person might still be there, but in terms of who that person or that thing is in my life, there has been an experience of losing that. And for me, I do think on some level, I don't say they're exactly the same thing, but I think the experience of them can be, it's the same or a similar process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it would be very, very useful to kind of, for people to know and understand that actually, I know for me, even through little things, I go through that process. Like if I really love a thing that I have and I lose it or it breaks or, even then there's a process, that same process. And I think we can quite easily minimize what impact loss has on people.
Do you know what you're saying? That two things came to mind. Like one is that I would get, like if there was I might have said this before, if there was a band that I really loved, that was really like one of my favorite bands, and they released an album that was shit, I'd be so hurt and I'd feel betrayed.
Oh, could you?
Yeah, but underneath that, I guess that was there was some sense of loss. There was like, I expected this to be different and now this isn't. And now when I go to see you, you're going to play this. And what have you done? What, you've ruined my life.
Yeah. How could you? How could you not think about me?
Yeah. But then in a more kind of, in a smaller sense, in a way, I think more to what you were talking about. I remember, so I had a thing for a while. I'd go to festivals and I was always looking at buying certain clothes and jewelry. And there were some rings that I managed to get hold of that were like, they were like stainless steel laser cut or something.
Yeah.
But I would spend hours, and I mean actual hours. Everybody else is watching bands and I'm like hunting around the festival.
For these rings.
Well, or for trying to find the jewelry that was just right for me, that really resonated with me, right? And I remember I had these rings, and because that's the thing, I'd find one that was like, that's perfect, right? And then every year, then the festival season would come around again, or if I went down to London in Camden where they'd have similar stalls, I'd be on the hunt to find similar. And I would constantly just be disappointed because I wouldn't find the same, or wouldn't find something that was quite as good. And there was these two rings that I really loved, and one of them especially. And I remember just leaving the house one day and I caught it on the door coming out. And it bent it out of shape and proper fucked it.
No. Oh no.
Yeah, and then don't get me, it ripped some skin out of my hand as well. Wasn't bothered about that. I was like, my ring. My ring's destroyed. I can never get this back. And that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But what I take from that, like reflecting from that, it was because of what the ring meant to me. I mean, that ring was important to me because it was tied to my identity and who I thought I was. Like with me being without that ring again, it literally felt like I'd lost a piece of myself.
Yeah. And I get that, totally get that, because I've had that with a ring before myself. Actually,
Really?
yeah. My daughter I got this ring. I don't know if I got it or she got it, but it had a little elephant on it, and that's her favorite animal. And I managed to misplace it, and I was seriously on the high. It's like, where can I get this ring from again? Like, and the shop that sold it, I think they'd either gone out of stock or it was like not in season or whatever it is. Like they didn't have it, and I phoned them.
Wow.
To see if I could get a ring from somewhere that was similar, and I did manage to find one in the end. Yeah, like it meant so much to me, what it represented.
Wow.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that. And I think it is. I think, as almost silly as it might sound, it's that, like, it's great if you can get a new one or you can get it replaced with something like that. But if you can't, I think there can be, there's that grieving process, or at least, the other side of it, there's that acceptance process of, well, now things have to change.
Yeah.
Like, not to kind of parody it or anything, but like, who will I be now I have to change my ring?
Yeah. Who am I going to be without this?
Who will I be without this ring? Yeah, exactly. Who will I be now my favorite band makes shit music?
Yeah, like, yeah, life will never be the same again. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I guess when I think about it now, it really makes me laugh because of the way that I used to be attached to stuff and people, because I thought it said something about me.
Right.
And that's had to change.
How so?
Well, I think when I when I had the loss last year, that was the initial place I fell into because it's the place I know the best. But then it started to become a process of why me? What's wrong with me? Like, what does it say about me? Why does this always happen to me? And it just turned into a very, very self-hateful process. And it was like, no, not everything that I lose defines something about myself. Because then it's like, this always happens to me. Things like that only happen to me. And it's like, no, no, it's random. And some of it's just lessons that I need to learn. I need to learn that I can live when things change. And it's okay for things to change. And it's okay to let go of stuff and not have such a big attachment to everything.
So, should we move on to our points?
Oh, yeah.
What's your first one?
I am going to go with there is no one way of grieving. And take the time to find your way of grieving. So again, my experience over the last year, because it was a relationship ending, lots of people were very, very, it's going to look like this and it'll be like this. And I can understand that for a while it's going to be like this. And, you know, it's like, and almost in my head, I think it was made worse by the fact that obviously I do what I do for a living. Because I kind of put an expectation over myself that I've got this. This will be all right.
You should be good at this. You should be able to skip this.
Yeah. Yeah. It won't take so long. The pressure, you know, I should be okay. But it was really, I've really had to let go and really allow myself to go, what do I need this process to look like for me now? And look at who I am now. Because previously I had a 1.5 year relationship that just ended very suddenly. And it was like an accumulation of all my losses sort of hit me at that point because I hadn't dealt with any of it previously in my life. And it was horrific because there was no process. There was no healing. I just tried to shut it all away. And you know, it was very, very painful and I suffered a lot. So this time it was really about, with everything I know and everything that I am, what do I need this to look like for me? So I guess you can design your own process. You can do it how you need to do it for you. And it doesn't fucking have to be how somebody else tells you. Or it doesn't have to be how it fucking says it is in the books. Because my process isn't like that. It's all over the fucking place. Some days are still shitty. So it's okay.
I'm thinking of going to like, I don't know, some website or something like design your grief process. Would you like to add these extras?
Love it. Ah, yeah.
I think for me that follows on to my one of my ones, which is give yourself time and know it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
You know, and not quite as hip and happening as yours. Design your own grief process, trademark.
Yeah, right here, right now.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things where there is a time element to it. There's a personal element, or there's something that's not, you can't plan it.
Yeah.
When I've either lost a friend or, you know, and either if it's a friend that's died or, you know, a friend that, well, there's been like a friend breakup, if you like, or it's a relationship or lost an entire group of friends. Mm-hmm. It's brought out stuff in me that like I didn't know how to deal with, didn't know what to do about. Like, it's not straightforward.
No.
You know, and I very much used to, well, with everything, like my default had always been and can still be, if I'm not careful, like I should be able to do this, I should be able to do that. Especially like it's the therapist curse, isn't it? I should know better about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, thinking that I should be sorted. And so for me, yeah, it's really important to know that it can take time.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That was one of mine as well. So
of course it was.
Of course it was. Yeah. But no, I think that's a like, it doesn't have like, your grief doesn't have an expiry date. It's not like, by this date you have to not feel like that anymore. Like it's one of those things that I know that losses I've had show up randomly out of the blue, like something can trigger it. And they could be losses that I've had years and years ago. So it's not a time-lined thing at all.
Yeah. Well, I know I've spoken about it before, but I lost a lot of friends a few years ago now due to a relationship breaking up. It was almost like I didn't, it happened very quickly, like the loss of, or at least it seemed to. And what it felt like was it felt like one day I've got all these friends and the next day I don't.
Yeah.
Like I suddenly didn't know who was still talking to me, who wasn't. And that was hard because that was my support network. That was my life in a way. And, on the surface, like you could say, well, nothing had really changed. And like with some of those guys, like I wasn't exactly spending a lot of time with them anymore. Things kind of had changed and moved on, but something shifted. And suddenly I felt very alone and unsafe with certain people and being in certain situations. And I felt that massive loss, and especially in the days now of social media, like, everybody's friends with everybody, especially if you live in a small town. Like it's easy to have anywhere between 50 and like 150 odd mutual friends with people, at least is in my experience. And so it's suddenly like, one day you go through your newsfeed and you're smiling because seeing all these pictures of everybody together, and the next day you're just feeling this heart-wrenchingness of loss because it's like, oh, I'm not part of that anymore. I've lost this thing. And yeah, like understanding that and navigating through that, that was difficult because it's not, I suppose, like to compare, like in some ways, like the death of a person, they're gone.
Yeah.
But this was different in that, like, well, those people are still there, but something else has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was, coming back to like, that took its own time. I didn't know how long that was going to take.
Yeah. I get that. Okay. My second one is make space for the process.
Make space for the process. Tell me more.
Yeah. This was such an invaluable lesson as I went through the process I went through last year. I couldn't just carry on with things just as everything was. And I know lots of people do that. And I've done that before as well. When I've had a loss, it's just like, just try to carry on with life as normal, soldier on and pretend like everything's okay, because that's going to help me somehow. To not change anything else in my life while I'm going through the loss might be helpful. But what I very quickly realized, it doesn't work like that. And because the process was one of, I've lost this relationship. I've also lost all that I thought I was during that relationship, all the plans, so many different losses sort of accumulated. And I had to allow space for that process to actually happen and change things and move things around a little bit and give it the respect it deserved and give myself the respect that I deserved in that process. And even now, my grandma passed away in December. It's still about making those spaces where I can honor that when I need to and I want to, rather than just packaging away and going, no, it's okay. Like, I can't deal with that right now. It can't come up for me right now because I need to go and do this. So it was really an active process of creating space for those things to happen, whether it was at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, whatever it was, but just allowing that extra space, knowing, even in my mind, like knowing that, okay, I need to take on less in my head right now because I need the headspace for this process. And I need to clear some stuff so that I'm not just doing everything that I was doing before, but I'm giving and allowing time to deal with what's coming up for me as an active process.
Yeah. I think it can be so easy with things like that to just try and get on.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to get on.
Yeah. Yeah.
and not recognize, hang on, actually something is changed here. Something has changed, and so this because this thing's quite important and quite big. Other things might need to change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at the start of the process, honestly, it was like, okay, I'm just going to, my diary's full. Like it was an unexpected loss. I didn't know it was going to happen. So like I knew on a Monday and it was done on a Tuesday, and like my diary still looked the same. And I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. It's good. I'll just keep everything as it is. I don't need to cancel anything. I don't need to change anything. It's like my whole life just changed.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was, firstly, I've got this because, you know, I'm a therapist, I'm a coach. I can do this. It's all right. I can manage it. And then it was like, well, if I just keep going, then I'll be okay. Because then, you know, there's that structure. Then everything else is normal. It doesn't feel as big. Yeah, that was fucking pointless because it was really painful to do that. And I had to shift stuff. I think another thing that actually helped me, though, was telling people in that kind of process of just going, look, I'm trying to do what I can, but this is what's going on, rather than hiding it from people, which is what I used to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then other people were able to make a little bit of space for me too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, you kind of talked to two of my points really, so I'm just going to pick one. But maybe lead on to the second one, and then maybe we'll tag team it like that. So one of mine was keep going, but make changes.
Yeah.
Keep going, but make changes. And that's for me, because when I think back about those times where I've experienced a kind of a loss that's involved some kind of change like that, I think there's a need for stability.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of, and carrying on to a point, but also there is that need for change. There's a need to almost create new pathways.
Yeah.
So like when I think about the, you know, the last breakup that I went through, I felt such a loss for that. And I suppose, and I don't remember whether I talked about this before when we did the heartbreak episode, but the real loss, or one of the real losses for me actually during that, was realizing that this idea I had about how things could be was actually just, well, that wasn't real.
Yeah.
Or at least the acceptance that the idea I had in my head about what I was striving for was consistently being proved to me that that's probably not going to happen. And it was having to accept the loss of that hope in a way.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, that's the impact of that was the entire relationship and then my entire life designed around that relationship. So it was more than just that.
Yeah.
But that was, I suppose, that was the crux of it. And what really helped me were those two sides of that coin. Of one was to keep going, to keep, like, you know, I was thankful in a way that I still had, you know, in a way, like, I think if something like that had happened to me when I was employed,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been easier in a way to be like, to ring up and be like, I can't come in, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel I could do that with the work I do now. But also, I suppose I didn't want to as well, because I feel more of a responsibility for what I do, I guess. So that helped to be able to have that, you know, still do the work, to still see clients, to still get on. Yet at the same time, there were changes that I did have to make to how I designed my life, what my day-to-day life looked like. You know, rather than like, what was I going to do with, like, between clients, rather than just spending my time texting my partner, or even those evenings when I would see her, like, well, what am I going to do instead? And I suppose for me, there's something about, well, it could have just been sat crying and wallowing. And some of it was, but then some of it was, what really helped was like, well, you know, what can I do differently? I think I might have said before, like, something I remember doing was sat there like a Friday night and starting to get like, oh shit, what do I do with my Friday night? And then it was like, oh, I could sit and actually watch a movie and sit and twiddle and play my guitar like I used to when I was 20 or whatever. Yeah. But that didn't feel like at that point, it didn't feel like resigning myself to that. It felt like, oh, this is something I'm choosing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of thing made a difference to me, because then I was choosing a new path.
Like that. Yeah. Feels like a lot of effort, doesn't it? Oh, man. Okay. So, number 3? Is that what we're on now?
I think so. I don't know. My numbers are completely out of order now. So yes, I'm just going to say yes.
Yes. Okay. So, love the shit out of yourself.
There's the love.
Yeah. No, I can see it on your face. Like, I know people can't see your face, but on your face, I know every time the point comes out, just waiting. He's just waiting for it, going, when is it going to be love?
It's like an Easter egg, like waiting to just drop that random word in.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's so fucking necessary through the journey of loss and grief to love yourself. And for people that struggle with that, I know I've struggled with that in the past. The question I asked myself was, if it was somebody that I really deeply loved and they had lost somebody, what would I be doing? How would I be supporting them? And then I applied that to myself. It's like, this is how I need to be treating me. And I had to be quite kick-ass about it. I had to hold myself accountable, because as soon as I'm not loving myself in that process, I'm in fear and shame and guilt, and I abandon myself because I get sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
It's like, stop being like that. What are you doing? But loving myself meant that I was able to embrace it and know that I would be okay, and know that I had my own back, and allow other people to have my back, and allow the support in from others. But also to comfort myself and to hold myself accountable. When I, was spiraling, I was more able to see it and be okay with it and not tell myself off for it. Really?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Well, it was the foundation of the process for me.
Yeah, and I think that can be a danger, can't it? Like we've touched on before, it's almost like it's secondary. Like you're feeling this loss or having this experience, and then there's this old shit that comes up, this old berating, like telling you that you should be dealing with this better. And it's like, great, now I feel worse. Now I feel more in the hole.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely apply the love.
My next one is don't get sucked in, but don't run from it either.
I like that.
Or at least I'd say try not to get sucked in. And I suppose the caveat here is, and it's okay if you do.
Yeah.
Like when I think of the losses I've gone through, I've definitely spent times in the hole beating myself up or crying because of the loss or whatever, like feeling that hopelessness. And I think it is, once we're in that place, I think that's the hardest place to kind of show ourselves love and acceptance. And in my experience, it's not always easy. Like that's why we're in the hole.
Yeah.
But I think that's the striving to be able to, or to find that. And so anyway, not getting sucked in. Yeah, it's to see that process happening and be able to interrupt that.
Yeah.
Like to catch it, to see that, it's just because my mind's on a negative cycle that I'm not going to be okay, that things aren't going to be the same, that I won't cope. That doesn't mean that's true.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, the don't run from it. Because like that for me, the paradox is almost, it's like I'm afraid that if I sit with it and be with it, it's going to suck me in. I'll end up in the hole.
Yeah.
But then if I try and avoid it, it just chases me anyway.
Yeah, it throws you in the hole.
Yeah, exactly. Like, when I think about, well, something I've done in the past, for example, is write songs. when I've lost someone, and I know not everybody's a songwriter and that's not their thing. And I haven't always written. It's not like, oh, I've lost my ring, I better write a song about it. Like that's often then when I'll journal or something like that, which will really help me. But it's some form of taking that and stepping towards it and doing something with it, inspecting it, being with it, rather than being sucked into the hopelessness and helplessness of it, and then being almost catapulting ourselves back to the other side, which is I just need to get on, I just need to ignore it. It's finding that middle ground and that kind of turn towards energy where it's like, I'm going to work with it and work through it.
Absolutely. I love that. That's completely necessary and ties in with what I'm going to do next, which is to say surrender and give in to what is. Beautiful.
Tell me more.
Well, it's one of those moments where it's like resistance is futile because it just...
we will take you.
Yeah. From my previous experiences of this, it led to very dark, painful places when I tried to fight the process and go, no, I'm not feeling like that. And I'm just going to get on with everything and package it all away. And I just need to get on with my life as it is so that, everything else has to be okay. Like I just need to get on with it. And then it just out of the blue will hit me at the worst of times and there is no packaging away like a process like that level of pain, because not dealing with the pain meant it turned into utter suffering. And it would just seep out in all sorts of weird ways and in weird places, and to numb it or avoid it or, run away from it, started doing things like drinking, which it's not very helpful because it only made it worse. So it's not helpful. And there's something in the process about, for me, when I just allowed myself to be with what was happening, it meant that I was honoring what was going on for me rather than going, no, you're not feeling like that right now. You can't feel like that right now. That has also been a experience I've had all of my life with people where it's like, no, it's not okay. It's not okay to be you. It's not okay to have that process. So I fought it before, and actually just being able to surrender and go, okay, I can't change what is. So I don't want to waste energy and create more issues by trying to change what is. So what would actually happen if I just stayed with what is? I guess the fear is what you spoke about, is that I would fall into that hole and not come out.
Yeah.
But actually letting go meant that the healing process could happen as it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the wrestle I guess I have with it. It's like when I'm having a tough time of it, am I having a tough time of it because this is part of the process, or am I having a tough time of it because I'm fighting the process?
Yeah, right.
And I think from the other side of it, it's a lot easier to be able to say, oh yeah, that was that and that was that and that was...
Yeah.
But from inside of it, like, it's fucking hard work. It's like, am I helping or making this work? Well, probably, actually, as a rule of thumb, if I'm bouncing between that thinking about it, I'm probably making it worse. But it never feels like that at the time. It feels like I'm damn well trying to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Once I've figured it out, it'll be fine.
Yes. I need to take a handle on this and get control. No. That was the last thing that I needed. It was like, no, don't try and control this. Just let it happen, because your mind and your body knows what it needs to heal.
Yeah, let go to it.
Yeah,
I get that. Well, I guess in a way that does kind of lead on to my next one, which I guess is what my fourth one. Did you do your fourth one? Are we on 4 now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Which is look for learnings over if onlys and what ifs.
Yeah.
And again, like this comes with a caveat of, for me, this is really about just being aware of this and doing our best to recalibrate as we go. It's not a finger pointy, don't ever do an if only or a what if, because, well, if you can do that, I want to know what you're smoking because I want some of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Because I think to kind of delete that part of our brains is well, I don't know. They haven't found something to do that yet. I definitely haven't found it. But yeah, it's like if I'm stuck going round and round something, then I'm normally trying to solve a problem that's some problem based in like I've done something wrong or I'm not going to be okay, or
Yeah.
it's something like that. Whereas when I'm able to see, do you know what, this is shit, but where does that leave me? Or kind of, I hate to say like, you don't want to be chirpy and be like, where's the gift in all this? Because, you know, there are definitely points where I've felt loss, where if someone had said that to me, I'd probably headbutt the motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found myself, like through doing journaling process, like a journaling process through those times of loss, whether it's been through like a loss of a relationship or a death or, you know, losing friends. If I sit there with my journal and I'm aware of those two kind of states, if you like,
Yeah.
if you want to be binary about it, then all the angry, denial, upset, helpless, sad stuff can come out, and that's okay.
Mm.
But then if I sit with that and be present with that long enough, then it will often shift into that more conscious, lighter space of, yeah, okay, but now what? And what's the truth here? And where does that go? I mean, like, you know, when I lost a lot of friends, I was angry and I was upset about the whole situation of various people. But I mean, that was me projecting all my stuff onto them. And then the more I sat with it, the more I was then able to go, okay, well, because then it flipped to, well, actually, now it's all my fault and I shouldn't have done this, and rah, rah, rah. And don't get me wrong, there's some truth in that. I couldn't say I was blameless at all. But again, then exploring that, then what I find is actually, well, where's the middle ground?
Yeah.
You know, how is some of this just, well, basically, like, I hate to be like, what's the word? I hate to be cliche about it, but sometimes this is just life, and it sucks because you put this person in this position with this set of beliefs and ideas, and they react this way.
Yeah.
And that causes this reaction, and there's learnings that come out of it. It's like, don't get through some of those processes I've been through. I learned some lessons that I definitely will not be needing to repeat. But would I have learned that without having to go through it and experiencing that loss and that pain? Probably not. I'd still probably be doing the same shit.
Absolutely.
You know, and for me to come back to, so specifically, I remember around death. So I lost a couple of friends. You know, one of them was about 9 years ago now, and one of them was more like 17 odd years ago. And I remember we were at Reading Festival, actually, and we were all about 18, and I was in a really tough relationship at the time. But it was one of those years when suddenly everyone was there. It was like 50 odd of us or something had turned up at this festival together. And we'd had a great weekend, and it was nice connecting with some of those people that I felt I hadn't seen for ages. And I remember thinking to myself, I've been sat with my friends and a bunch of his mates. And I remember being like, I really want to hang out with those guys again more. Like, 'cause it's been such a long time, like feeling that nostalgia. Yeah. And then waking up in the morning and looking out of the tent and just everyone staring at us and being behind police tape. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then long story short, after an interview with the police and everything, and they led us up to sort of behind where the stalls were, which you normally didn't get to go. It's like, what's going on here? And they told us that he died. That he was asthmatic basically, and the wine that he'd had exacerbated. He'd basically passed out and just stopped breathing.
Wow.
And they don't, as far as they know, like it wasn't an overdose, it wasn't foul play, it was just fucking life. It was one of those life sucks moments where things just add up the wrong fucking way. And being in the middle of a field, it's like, maybe if there was a paramedic that happened to be there, and that had have happened in a hospital, he'd be all right. But
yeah,
it was like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I had similar happen with my friend of 7 or 8 years ago, where there were those thoughts of, I want to hang out with you more, and like, I'll make plans, I'll do this, I'll go down, and it's one of those things, I think, where it's easy to think there'll be a next time.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be that chance.
Yeah.
And then something like that happens, and it's like, oh, they're gone. And now there's not that chance anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, that was those two things were, well, the same lesson really, but they were pretty big lessons in, well, we're not putting those things off and remembering that when certain things happen, it's really easy to be like, yeah, there'll be another opportunity. And don't get me wrong, like I think the other side of that is, oh my God, I can't ever let an opportunity go. And then that becomes another type of anxiety.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when I look at that now, I still get sad thinking about it, but it just reminds me of how precious life can be and connection can be.
Yeah. And I can only say after a year of continuing learning lessons, it's not ending. For me, that is the gift. Is that I get to do something different.
Yeah.
I get to reaffirm the people in my life that I love and that matter to me, and that no, I don't have forever to say, I care about you, I love you, you matter to me. And yeah, it just highlights how important it is to be able to do that all the time and not think, yeah, they know, so I don't need to say it. But it also highlighted how important I am, and not to just dismiss myself in all of those connections and relationships and spaces in my life. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Caught me more than I expected it to. But yeah, like I for me, those are like that lesson that I had about making time and seizing that opportunity in a way. Like, would I have seen that so deeply if those things wouldn't have happened? I'm not sure I would. Like, would that be the lesson that I'd give to everybody? I'd want to, like, as the process of learning that lesson? Absolutely fucking not.
No.
But I'm pleased I got to see those things.
Yeah.
So what's your next one?
Oh, I don't know. Now it's like pick a mix again.
Well, you got one more, love.
I know, but I've got like 34.
As per fucking usual.
Oh.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah, I'm going to say the little things can make a massive difference. And they have made a massive difference to me over the last 8 to 9 months. Like, yeah. And being able to ask for the things that I need, and little things that normally I would dismiss, but there are little things that really, like when they're the same, or little routines that have just kept me going, you know, senseless things sometimes, mindless things even, but those things have really allowed me to kind of keep grounded during the process and have something that is familiar, or something that does comfort me or allow me to feel safer in that process. So the little things have made such a massive difference, like setting up spaces where I can be with people, or setting up times where I can really go for a walk and really reflect. Little things, like things that comfort me, like my little teddies, or, you know, things that just, I love hugs. So during this process, I laugh.
I'm just thinking about you walking down the street and being like, you, give me a hug.
What makes you think it would be as aggressive as that? Like,
I have no idea, Amy, whatsoever.
I'd be more like, feel the love.
Feel the love, but no, actually hug me.
Yeah, just...
Sorry, random brain tangent.
I'm used to it. Yeah, like things like that. I couldn't dismiss those things. Those things made such a big difference to me during that process, especially things like hugs, because I find them very, very comforting. And it was really important to me to be able to have hugs every day. So put those things into place. Like, I feel like that's part of honoring myself when I can do that and recognize that actually these are the things I need. And it's okay to need things, and it's okay to put those things into place. And it's okay to tell other people to fuck off if they if they question it, or, you know, or like, why do you need to do that? Or no, like, yeah, just really honor yourself in the way that you need to, and put the things in place that need to be in place.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, that comes back to what I was talking about the keep going part of keep going, but make changes, right? There's, when something like, if there's a big loss or an important loss to you, then there's that stability that's needed, and that comfort, that security. And, you know, I can definitely feel, I've been in those times in my life where it can really feel like, you know, the ground opens up.
Yeah.
Floor falls away kind of thing. And so to have those kind of comforts, whether it's meditating or journal reflection or a hug or sitting with Netflix, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Like, I think it brings some comfort and stability, doesn't it, to the change?
Yeah. You don't have to explain it to other people. Just,
So my final point then is don't try and deal with it alone.
Yeah.
And I know this has been one of my points in, well, probably multiple previous podcasts. But this has been a real part of my journey, is realizing that for a long time, my only option seemed to be like, if I'm having a shit time, then shut everybody else out and I'll deal with it. And I had all sorts of stories as to why, but I really, at the bottom of it, I think it's not okay for me to be like this. Like, I don't think I ever languaged it out like this, but it would be something around like me feeling weak, or me feeling like somehow I'm not okay to be feeling like it's not right. So I'm berating myself, beating myself up. And then a mistrust of other people as a result. I think largely that's probably the protection. The protection of it. I don't trust you, but really it's actually, I don't want you to see me. But I've also found it can, you know, it can keep us stuck in the spiral. I know we've talked about it many times, but there's some magic when you're able to find someone that you can allow yourself to trust. And obviously it's got to be the right person, with how you're feeling with that stuff, like connecting over that. I don't know, it just tends to bring some kind of magic. And for me, it helps bring that new perspective a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or at least some relief from it. And this, especially like, I don't know, going through something like a loss or something like that, just that, it might not bring the person back or change the situation, but like, it can, in my experience, it can really change it can at least change our experience of it in that moment.
Yeah.
Just not feel, because that connection makes us feel less alone with it.
Definitely.
And this is coming from someone who's found that the hardest thing to do in the world. But every time I choose to do it, at least nowadays, now I seem to have a better radar for choosing the right people for it. Like 99 times out of 100, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. And it is really important, because that was one of mine too. And it's hard in those spaces. It's hard. Well, I know it was hard for me to be vulnerable and let it all hang out and just be okay with that.
Yeah.
But that is definitely one of the things that I pushed myself to do and still do during this time. Knowing that it's okay. But yeah, I definitely would say, please ensure it's somebody that you really trust and is able to hold that in a way that honors you.
Yeah, and you know, just as you're saying, that made me think, like, I realize now I'm lucky in that the way that I seem to have designed my life is that most, if not all, the people I have around me are actually really understanding, caring, compassionate people. So whenever I do finally open up, like, it's met with that kindness and acceptance, and it's some level of, see, you dickhead, you should have done that in the first place. Which in a way is nice, right? However, I speak to a lot of people who'll say things like, you know, they know, and maybe some of it is projection from their past, but like they are still connected to people who, like, they'll say like they don't get mental health, or they'll just tell me to man up.
Yeah.
They'll just, you know, or they'll, you know, they'll berate me, they'll joke about it. And it's like, yeah, we can do the piece about, well, you realize that's about them.
Yeah.
But for me, before really being able to understand that, we have to be able to feel okay. We have to be able to feel the acceptance. Like, I need something to balance it off against, if that makes sense. So it's like, if I'm not feeling okay about feeling the way I'm feeling, and then I share it with you, and you say exactly the same thing back, and it's just going to confirm what I already think. It's fine if I share it with 5 other people and then I feel better. It's like, then it's easier for me to go, well, maybe you're the one with the problem.
Yeah.
But it's a lot harder if that's the first person I share it with.
Yeah. No, I get that. Resonates. Yeah.
So, any closing thoughts on grief and loss?
Yeah. Honor yourself and honor the process. I know that the only way out is through when it comes to healing grief. And one thing that definitely showed up for me was knowing that the depth of my grief also showed me the depth of my ability to love.
I love that. Well, both of those points about, you know, the way is through, and about the depth, because I think that's true. I think, like, I've had family members who've passed away, and I've not been so upset as other members around me. And initially I was almost there being like, something wrong with me? But I realized it was just because at that point in my life, I wasn't so close to them.
Yeah.
Whereas then I've had friends who died who I'm not blood related to, and I've been heartbroken. So yeah, I think that's the other side of it, right? If you love that deeply and you value that deeply, then you're going to feel that.
Yeah.
So my closing thoughts are, grief and loss, they're part of the human condition. And it can be hard, but it's also normal. So, as you said, know you can find a way through, and that you can be okay, and that you are okay. And if you can't see it, you will.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Is that 17 now?
Yeah.
17 episodes.
Yeah.
Done and dusted.
Done. You've been listening to the Notcast podcast, Life, Love, Misery and Deep Shit, with your TheraCoach hosts,
Amy Dave.
and David Bird.
Amy is a transformative spiritual and self-love coach and therapist who takes people on a powerful journey towards self-love and personal transformation. She empowers her clients to discover the truth of who they really are, their true purpose, and the truest expression of themselves, whilst enabling them to navigate life and its challenges with ease, grace, and above all, love. Create relationships that rock their world and let go of the toxic shit that holds them back. You can connect with Amy on her Facebook at facebook.com/amy.dave11. That's AMI.DAVE.11.
David is a transformative coach and hypnotherapist who guides his clients on a journey of self-exploration and transformation to smash the shit out of their mental stumbling blocks and send their emotional baggage packing, helping them to get back in the driver's seat, create a more powerful, loving connection to life, and unleash onto the world their bright, shining light of authentic give-a-fuckness. You can connect with David at his website, dbch.co.uk. That's dbch.co.uk.
The Notcast.